With 2025 now upon us, it's time to talk about the most anticipated films of the year that we're going to be talking about throughout the year here on JC's Movies. Let's get into the list. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Welcome back into JC's Movies with me, JC, where you can find all kinds of movies and TV series content here. If you're a fan of movies, particularly superhero, comedy, and horror, those are the ones that are really usually right up my alley, and you'll see plenty of those in this upcoming anticipated movies list. But if you're a fan of that type of movies, be sure you're subscribed here to the channel. We'll be covering it throughout 2025. And of course, we've still got the top movies of 2024 list to get to. I've got a couple of movies I'm trying to catch up on, but I'm going to have that guy out to you guys here on the channel in about a week. I'll have my favorite movies of 2024 list. But in the meantime, and in between time, figured we could look ahead to 2025, and it was time to bring you guys my most anticipated movies of the year list. So that's what we're going to get into here. Got some honorable mentions, and then I've got my top 10, which I was actually able to narrow it down to 10, which is funny for me because sometimes I end up doing like a top 15, but I did it and just made a bunch of honorable mentions. So I got almost 10 honorable mentions as well. But we're going to get into the list momentarily. Before I do, just want to ask you guys a quick favor. If you're watching this, just hit the thumbs up button. Really helps a shit ton with that YouTube algorithm, helps us find more movie fans like yourself. And if you are one of those, like I said, be sure and subscribe here to the channel. But with no further ado, let's talk about my most anticipated films of 2025. All right, let's lead it off here at number 10 with The Strangers Chapter 2. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I never even watched The Strangers Chapter 1 and shit, right? But to me, I love The Strangers, the original one with Liv Tyler and those guys in it. It was really good film. And of course, The Strangers Pray at Night, I think, was underrated. And I was planning on seeing The Strangers Chapter 1, but what surprised me is that they decided to pretty much do a remake, for the beat for beat as the original Strangers, pretty much is what I heard. So I'm like, well, I don't know, I didn't really find the point of going around and watching it. I'm like, I guess I'll just wait for chapter 2 to where they're doing something kind of more original. But I guess I will probably try and get around to Strangers Chapter 1 prior to this. But I am looking forward to the Strangers Chapter 2 because I am a fan of that franchise. Renny Harlin directing, I think, is a good choice, from some action movies of the past. He's also directed in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, who has experience in the horror realm. I need to get around to chapter 1, but I am going to check out The Strangers Chapter 2 in 2025, and it cracks the top 10 most anticipated list at number 10. Next up at number 9, we have one that I actually wasn't expecting to really make my list. But, when I was comparing it with some other things that ended up being honorable mentions, I think that it won out just due to the fact that I am a superhero movie fan. Marvel has done some good things in the more further back past recently, a little bit more to be desired. So that's what gives me a little bit more pause on this. But I do think that they have done some cool things as shown in the trailer. I think it's gonna be fun to get to see Red Hulk. Hopefully, they do a little bit better with him than they did with the regular Hulk. But also it's going to be interesting to see a Captain America movie, our first one without Chris Evans. Anthony Mackie stepping into the role there. I did like the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, although, some of the special effects left a lot to be desired and such. I'm interested to see what they do with this, and of course I will be checking it out. So just because of my love for superhero movies and, some of Marvel's previous success back in, a few years ago, right? I think that kind of allowed me to lean more with them to allow this one to crack my list rather than ending up as an honorable mention. So at number 9, we got Captain America, Brave New World, directed by Julius Ona, starring Harrison Ford, Liv Tyler, Anthony Mackie, and several others. All right, number 8 here on the most anticipated movies of 2025 list, we have The Wolfman, or just guess it's just titled Wolfman. But I'm interested because it's directed by Leigh Whannell, who I've liked a lot of the things that he's done in the past. I think him and James Wan both typically do really good work. Of course, they got their start together in the Saw movies. Leigh Whannell was even one of the 2 characters locked up in there in the Saw movie. Obviously not what's his name, Cary Elwes, but the other guy was Leigh Whannell. So, helped James Wan make it and then starred in it and has done some good stuff on his own. He's writing and directing this one. It is Blumhouse, which, a few years ago would have probably been more confident in versus how I'm feeling about it currently, because Blumhouse has put out some more stinkers as of late, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I am interested in it. I was more interested when I think it was who Ryan Gosling was originally cast to play the Wolfman, but I still am going to have to check this one out. And I think it has a chance to be pretty decent. I'm a little bit worried, though, because it is coming out in January. And we know sometimes horror movies that get thrown in January are ones that the studio don't really have high hopes for. But maybe this will be one that goes against the grain and will be good. I do think it has a pretty good cast. You got Julia Garner in here. Like I said, I do like Leigh Whannell. Writing and directing, Sam Yeager, Christopher Abbott. So we'll see what happens with Wolfman, but I'm excited about it enough to put it up on my most anticipated films. And I think the fact of how much I loved Nosferatu really allowed me to be more excited for the Wolfman as well. So it cracks in the list here at number 8. All right. Then at number 7, we have the Thunderbolts, which I think is intriguing because it's another team up superhero movie, although it's not, kind of like your main team. It's kind of your B team, if you would, your B squad, I guess. The Thunderbolts, I know, is a, famous comic from Marvel as well. But I am more anticipating, more excited for this one because I like a lot of the characters that are going to be involved in this team, some of their previous work. I think Florence Pugh, easy on the eyes for one, and she can do no wrong with her acting as well. That's a lethal combo, and I love her character that she's been playing in the MCU. I think that David Harbour, his character was pretty funny in his appearance that we got to see in the movie there with Black Widow alongside of her. So seeing those two back together is going to be nice. Sebastian Stan, I think his Winter Soldier has done a lot of good things throughout the MCU. So I think that this cast of characters is nice. And I think the most underrated one is probably Wyatt Russell playing, agent there from the Captain America and Winter Soldier series. So we'll see how it pans out. But I do have some decent hopes for Thunderbolts. It's kind of almost like their answer to the Suicide Squad in a way when you think about it, because it's the group of villains, thrown together, kind of assembled to be heroes in a way. So we'll see how it plays out. But I am pretty excited for it. I got some decent hopes for it. Directed by Jake Schreier, written by Kurt Busiek, John Acalo, and Lee Sung Jin. Of course, Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, David Harbour, as I talked about there. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the one that's been assembling this team. We've kind of seen that in post-credit scenes throughout the last phase there of the MCU. So now you're kind of getting the payoff of that with Thunderbolts finally in 2025, cracking the most anticipated films list here. All right, number 6, guys, getting close to the top 5 here, just missing out on it, as I Know What You Did Last Summer. And it's funny, I guess I wouldn't have expected myself to be as excited for this movie as I kind of am a little bit. I'm a little bit anxious to see what happens with it because of the returning cast. You're getting Freddie Prinze Jr. back, Sarah Michelle Gellar. There's rumors that you may get Jennifer Love Hewitt back as well. That's what the kind of hope is. We'll see what happens. It's funny that Sarah Michelle Gellar's been around on set because we know that her character kind of died. So maybe it's some flashback scene, a little cameo there. Maybe we're looking at the Scream franchise and seeing what they did with Billy Loomis there and seeing if they can't do the same in their franchise. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because sometimes these requels, these reboots, whatever you want to, legacy sequels, whatever you want to call them, where you bring back some of the main cast. Some have been really good, some have been hit or miss, but for the most part, I think I've enjoyed them more than I've disliked them. And I Know What You Did Last Summer, not my favorite franchise by any means. I was a fan of the original one, and the sequel, I didn't think it was as good, but I still have a really good time with it. Jack Black's character is hilarious in it. There's a lot of fun aspects of the sequel. The third one, I always Know What You Did Last Summer or whatever. I mean, I don't even think I ever made it through that damn piece of shit. So, and then they had, what was it, the Prime series or something they tried to reboot. I never watched it either. I couldn't get into it. So I wouldn't expect myself to be as excited about this as I am, but I think bringing back some of that original cast, maybe we'll see what happens with it. Jennifer Caton Robinson directing, written by Lois Duncan, Jeff Howard, and Sam Lansky. The cast that we have, that we know of, we know Freddie Prinze Jr., potentially Jennifer Love Hewitt, and then also Sarah Michelle Gellar's been rumored. She's been around set, obviously, but Madeline Klein, of Outer Banks fame, joining the cast, and I think that's a really good fit. That'll be a fun addition there. So I'm excited to see how this one pans out. I like the cast that's shaping up. I like the legacy sequel aspect, and we'll see what happens with I Know What You Did Last Summer, my 6th most anticipated film of 2025. All right, top 5. Let's get it, guys. We into the top 5 now. My top 5 most anticipated films of 2025, starting with number 5, and it's The Monkey, and we're going to get to see this one pretty early in 2025, February 21st release date, and multiple people involved in this is what has me super excited because, for one, it's based off a Stephen King short story, which is cool enough already, but you know who's directing this is Osgood Perkins, who also is writing it, who we know has done some really good work. Most recently, Longlegs, a film that I absolutely loved from this past year. I think a lot of people really were fans of Longlegs and probably wanted to see what Osgood Perkins is going to do next. So he's going with a Stephen King short story, The Monkey, which, I don't really know anything about the short story, and I kind of like that. I kind of like going in blind, but I am a Stephen King fan. Osgood Perkins writing and directing, and you got Elijah Wood in the cast. I think Osgood Perkins is playing a role in the cast as well in this one. I think James Wan is on as a producer, so a lot of really interesting parts involved here that I think could make this a really good and fun movie that probably is going to be pretty scary in 2025. We'll see what happens. We know Osgood Perkins is really good at creating tension and things like that, and creates really good horror atmosphere as well. Elijah Wood has done really good stuff in the horror realm when he's tagged in there. And of course, Stephen King's a legend in and of his own. So we'll see what happens with it, but I'm really excited for The Monkey. Look out for it coming early this year. Like I said, February 21st release date. All right, number 4, guys, and quite frankly, the only reason this is at fourth and not probably in the top 2 or at least top 3 is just because I don't know if they've started filming yet, so I don't know if it's going to make it and be released in 2025. I know that was the original target date, so I'm still going to include it on this list because if you guys know me, It Follows is one of my favorite horror movies of the past 20 years, since the 2000s, pretty much. A lot of my favorite horror movies come from the, 80s, 70s, even some into the 60s. But really, post then, you had Scream, you had a couple that I really liked, but It Follows would maybe be in my top 10, probably at least top 15 favorite horror movies of all time. So the fact that they're coming out with a sequel for it, over a decade later, I think the original was 2014. David Robert Mitchell coming back to write and direct again, and Micah Monroe coming back to star again, which we just got to see her have an awesome turn in Longlegs there. So get to see her return in They Follow. I'm just interested to see what they do with the plot. Or they could go a ton of different ways with it. I hope it makes it for a 2025 release, but we don't have really any information other than David Robert Mitchell attached, Michael Monroe attached, and we knew it was originally supposed to come out in 2025, but hopefully it still makes it. But whenever it comes out, and be highly anticipating They Follow. And then at number 3, I think it comes as no surprise if you guys know my love for 90s comedies. There's a lot of Adam Sandler ones that fit into that mix that I'm a huge fan of, one being Billy Madison, the other being Happy Gilmore. Of course, you could throw The Waterboy, others in there, but Happy Gilmore is definitely high on that list of 90s comedies for me, which I think is somewhere where some of the best comedy movies came from. Tommy Boy, maybe the best of all time, in my opinion, but that's a whole nother avenue I won't go down. But Happy Gilmore 2, you guys may have seen just before Christmas. We've got our first official teaser. Got some looks at the characters there. We are getting Shooter McGavin back, Christian McDonald coming back to play him, Julie Bowen's coming back to play Virginia Vennet again, Ben Stiller coming back to play the nursing home worker, whatever the hell he was in the original. And then you got some interesting celebrity cameos. I think Travis Kelce popped up. One of the Safdie brothers popped up in the teaser trailer. So not only is that all enough to sell you, just the fact of getting Happy Gilmore 2, getting a lot of the cast back. But to me, a big selling point is the director. Kyle Newacheck is directing this movie, guys, which if you guys don't know who Kyle Newacheck is, that's Carl from Workaholics. He directed a lot of those things. And since then, he's got, into a lot of directing roles, and he's kind of teamed up with Adam Sandler. I think he directed the murder mystery movies and getting the privilege to direct Happy Gilmore 2. So not only are you getting a Happy Gilmore tie, you're getting a Workaholics tie, which if the intro video for the channel doesn't show you, I'm a big fan of the Workaholics TV show as well. So I think this has the chance to be a great comedy, which we just do not get much of anymore. You guys have heard me bitch all the time about there hardly ever being any good comedies anymore. And I think and hope that we will get that with Happy Gilmore 2. So it's right here. One of my most anticipated films of 2025, number 3 on the list. Can't wait for it. Which brings us into our top 2 most anticipated films of 2025. And surprise, surprise, they're both comic book films. One of them being a Marvel movie here, and that is The Fantastic Four: First Steps, directed by Matt Shakman, coming out in 2025, of course. It's believed to be, that timepiece taking place in the 1960s. We know our cast, but we don't really have a ton of info plot-wise. I know there was a trailer that was premiered at a festival, or was at a festival or at a con once, that showed some interesting details. You could see a little bit of grainy footage of it going around on the internet, but I know Galactus looked awesome. I'm interested to see what else they do. Maybe this is where we get to see Robert Downey Jr.'s first appearance as Dr. Doom. That's one of the reasons why it's so high up on this list for me, but I also think it's really high on this list for me because Marvel has to have this movie be successful. If there's two things Marvel has to nail to get back in people's good graces, it is Fantastic Four and it is X-Men whenever they go to that. So this movie needs to be really good for Marvel, and I think a lot of people are going to be hotly anticipating this one, myself included. Reed Richards as Pedro Pascal, Sue Storm as Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, excuse me, Joseph Quinn as Johnny Storm, Ebon Moss-Bachrach, their cousin from The Bear fans there is Ben Grimm, Julia Garner as one of the villains, Ralph Ineson playing voicing Galactus, John Malkovich is in the movie. So you got a great cast, like I said, directed by Matt Shakman, written by Peter Cameron, Josh Friedman, and Jeff Kaplan. Some Marvel mainstays there. So this is an important movie for the MCU and one that's going to be highly anticipated in 2025. So it's my number 2 on my most anticipated movies of 2025 list. All right, and before I reveal my top movie of the year, which probably will come as no surprise to most of you guys that have followed the channel for any amount of time, but nonetheless, we still got to talk about what the number 1 movie is. But my honorable mentions here, I do have a decent little list of honorable mentions. What is it? Final Destination Bloodlines. That's the title there. So I couldn't read my own handwriting. Got these written down a little bit, but I think that it's obviously, a series that we're excited to see come back. This movie's been rumored for a while, delayed, and hopefully it comes out and we'll see a new Final Destination film. And I think it's probably even more, anticipated now just due to the fact that Tony Todd is rumored to have an appearance in the movie, and obviously he just passed. Rest in peace to a legend there in Tony Todd. So Final Destination Bloodlines, I think, could be a good one. Guy Busick involved as one of the writers there, directed by Zach Lebowski and Adam B. Stein. Then you have The Black Phone 2, honorable mention for me. I liked The Black Phone a lot, maybe not as much as some did previously, but I think it's a really good movie. I'm interested to see how they're going to do a sequel with the way the first one went, but Ethan Hawke's rumored to come back, so I think that could be good. Scott Derrickson probably coming back as well. Saw 11. The only reason it didn't make the top 10 is just because of everything kind of going on with it, delays and kind of changes at the helm and things like that, because Saw 10 to me was one of the better movies of the franchise since, kind of some of the original ones. So I Saw 11 I am excited about, but it's an honorable mention. Megan 2.0. I liked Megan. It was pretty fun. I just didn't think I was as big a fan of it as most. And, that's never really been my thing. Those killer doll movies and that type of genre, characters like, Chucky and the Leprechaun, and now I kind of group Megan in there as well. Just never really been my bag, but I will watch it, so it is on the list as an honorable mention. And then Flight Risk, just missed out on the top 10. I'm interested in this one. Mark Wahlberg starring in a thriller directed by Mel Gibson, who really can do a great job directing some movies, as we know, so that's an honorable mention. And then we got the Running Man remake, which probably will be more true to the Stephen King story than the original was, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it's another Glenn Powell vehicle, and it's directed by Edgar Wright. So that could be an interesting team up, and I'm anxious to see how things turn out there. So that is an honorable mention for me as well. And then we have Freakier Friday. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis teaming back up with, what's her name from the original Freaky Friday? Can't think of her. Lindsay Lohan. Couldn't think of her name for a second there. So yeah, I'll probably watch it. A Disney Plus movie. You got to throw it in there. It's not going to crack my top 10 by any means, but I'll name it as an honorable mention. Hard Eyes. Don't know enough about it really to put it in my top 10, but it could end up being one that ends up being one of my favorite films of the year, just because it's a Valentine's Day horror movie. And then Screamboat. I haven't really been a big fan of these public domain horror movies, but there's some interesting people tied to this one, including David Howard Thornton from the Terrifier franchise. Steamboat Willie became public domain, so it's going to be like a Mickey Mouse horror movie, kind of using Steamboat Willie stuck on a boat, and they're calling it Screamboat. So I'm interested. I'll check it out. And then we got Michael, the Michael Jackson biopic. I'm going to have to check that one out as well. It's honorable mention. And then the last honorable mention I have is Death of a Unicorn. I think that this really looks intriguing. Directed and written by Alex Sharfman. You got Jenna Ortega and Will Poulter in here, and it seems kind of like one of those crazy movies where you don't really understand what's happening, and it's just kind of trying to figure it out as it unfolds. Other good people in the cast: Richard E. Grant, Anthony Carrigan, and of course Paul Rudd, and Tia Leone of Bad Boys fame is going to be in this one as well. So those are the honorable mentions. But my number 1 film of 2025, drum roll. And no surprise, of course, it is Superman, written and directed by James Gunn, starring David Cornsweet, Rachel Brosnahan, Nicholas Hoult, Nathan Fillion, Millie Alcock, Isabella Merced, Frank Grillo, Skylar Gisondo. We could go on down the cast. You guys know it, though. I've covered it since the early casting process began, since before principal photography began for this movie. Been following it. It kickstarts the DCU, which I'm super excited about. James Gunn, DC Studios, the new DCU, obviously already actually started with Creature Commandos, but this will be the live action beginning. Really, that trailer did nothing to temper my expectations. It threw them through the roof, as you guys who saw the trailer reaction probably realized. I think that James Gunn is doing a great job kind of blending the classic Superman, kind of the Christopher Reeve style, with a little bit of some of the nice aspects of Man of Steel, which you guys know I'm a fan of. And I think this movie could be a good blend of both of those worlds. And you're going to get that bright Superman. You're going to get those bright colors that people have been asking. You're going to get that hopefulness. You're going to get Superman saving people. Rachel Brosnahan looks like a textbook Lois Lane. My expectations are through the roof for this film, and maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe they're a little bit too high, but July can't get here soon enough. Can't believe we're this close upon the start of the DCU. I'll continue to cover any news on it here on the channel, but no surprise, my number one most anticipated movie of 2025, James Gunn's Superman. So there it is, guys. My most anticipated movies of 2025 list, my top 10 there with several honorable mentions. Think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff released in 2025. I would have loved to talk about some more things that I didn't get to talk about in this video, but it would have been, hours long. But I think there's plenty of movies we'll be talking about throughout the channel here throughout 2025 as we go through and really see some of these movies that will be fun. They're going to make us laugh. Some of them may scare us. Some of them may even make us cry. But that's why we love movies. And if you love movies, be sure that you're subscribed here to the channel. Hit that like button on the video before you head out, and be sure to throw your thoughts in the comments. What's your most anticipated movie of 2025? What's a movie that's not on my list that may be on yours? Anything you got there. Always appreciate those interactions, just like I appreciate you tuning into this one, and I will catch you on the next one.